Hi class, in this video we're going to reopen our Hello World project and look a little bit more at some Visual Studio capabilities and things that go on there. I'm going to open Visual Studio again, and when I open Visual Studio I don't have any project to open, so I have some options. I have my recent projects listed here. Remember, this is per computer and it's limited to about 10 entries. Well, looks like they've upped that, huh? Got a lot of entries, but you want to be careful when you're using this recent list that you're getting the project that you are thinking you are. Now, another way that we can open something if it's not on our recent list, because we're using a different computer or something like that, is our file menu, and I can choose Open, Project Solution. Now, I've got to change my Visual Studio defaults also, because I keep going to this folder that's not where I would like to save my projects. So I'm going to go find my Documents folder where I have saved them. And here's my Hello World project that we worked on last time. And the file type that I want to open is .sln, and you might not be seeing that if you're not showing file types in your view settings for Windows, but you should see the Visual Studio icon with the little purple arrow there showing you that it's a Visual Studio project. And this is the file type that we want to choose to open. So I can click on it once and choose Open, or I can double click it to open it. Either way, Visual Studio will open that project. Now remember, if I don't see my program file in the code window, I could just find my Solution Explorer window and expand my project settings and find my .cs file and double click on it to open it in the code window. I'm going to zoom in here a little bit. Now, what about this project a little bit more here? Whenever Visual Studio generated this project for me, it named my class program, and it named my .cs file program.cs. And I mentioned in the last video that's important, and we do have to have those names in sync. Well, what if I want to name my class something else? I don't really like program.cs. I can do that, and the way I'm going to do it in a controlled manner is by using Solution Explorer. So if I use the Solution Explorer window and click on my program.cs file to select it, just like any file within Windows, I could click again to go into rename mode, and I could rename my .cs file that way. I want to make sure that the .cs file type stays on the file name. Now another way is I could right click on my program.cs file and choose rename, and often you'll see me use kind of longer methods like that so that everybody is sure what I did in the video, but you can sure use the shortcuts. Now once I'm in rename mode, I want to change the name of this to Hello World, and I'm going to look at my solution. Oh, look, it's the same exact thing, so that wouldn't work very well. So I can do a couple of different things. I could rename my namespace. Let's try that. Let's see how messed up we get, okay? I'm going to press Escape to leave rename mode. And on my solution, can I rename it? Let's see. Oh, there is a rename. Let's make it Hello World App. Now, when I did that, if you notice, it didn't change anything anyplace else. My namespace still says Hello World. My project here still says Hello World. So I'm going to rename the project too. I will rename it and make it be Hello World App. Notice at first when we start out, all of these names kind of are the same, and then we want to update them. Now, it didn't rename my namespace in my program, so I will rename that so that it matches. I'm going to run my program and make sure that with all these changes, nothing has become upset, because there are a lot of hidden links within Visual Studio. And if I run it, oh, I see my message, Hello World. My read key statement is making it sit there waiting for me. I'll press enter. So everything looks good. Now I finally can rename my .cs file. Why did I go to all that trouble? Well, my class and my namespace cannot be the same. If they're the same, I could be in trouble because there would be some confusion there on the compiler's part. And just like we were looking at error messages in the last video, that can be the kind of error that's really hard for the compiler to identify to you. So it can cause some really confusing error messages. Now I'm ready to rename my program.cs file. I'm going to use Solution Explorer, and again I'm going to right click and rename, and I'm going to name this Hello World. That's going to be my .cs file name. Now Visual Studio says whenever you're renaming a .cs file, you could be affecting some of your source code. Would you like that to automatically be updated? And yes, I would. So I'll say yes, and it'll update my class statement. Now, how come Visual Studio can update that class statement name for us, but it didn't update the namespace to match our project? That's just the way Visual Studio is. That's the way it's been developed. So we are slaves to the way it works. We can't change that. But we want to minimize the amount of renaming we do of things. With our .cs files in our class libraries, we're fine as long as we use the Solution Explorer and say, yes, we want to copy those renames across our whole project. Let's run it again. Let's do a lot of testing. Make sure that we haven't affected anything. So it looks good. Now, some other things about Visual Studio. We know that Visual Studio created a project folder for our project. There are some shortcut ways for us to get to that within Visual Studio. First, using Solution Explorer. If we click on our solution, the properties screen down at the bottom of the screen will show us the full path to that folder. Where is it saved on the system? And mine is in my D drive, in my documents folder, and it shows me all that information right here. Well, I can also use the Solution Explorer to open that folder in File Explorer so that I could verify things. So I can right click on my solution and choose Open Folder and File Explorer, and that'll take me into my project. My view settings in Windows, I have changed my view settings to allow me to see hidden items and file name extensions. And these are settings that I would recommend that you change on your system, because as a developer, you need to be fully aware of what extensions are being added to your file names and if any hidden items are being placed in your folders. Now, along those lines, I have this hidden.vs folder that you shouldn't have, and it has something to do with source code control that we'll be looking at a little bit later in this semester. Okay, so Visual Studio will let me jump from Visual Studio into File Explorer for my project folder. If I go into my project folder, I see that I have a bin folder and an obj folder. And then I have my helloworld.cs file that I'm seeing here in this development environment. And then I have another file that is the C# project file. And it's actually this right here in my Solution Explorer. See how that icon is the same? And if we look at it here in File Explorer, there's our fancy icon for our project file. Now, in our bin folder, that's short for binaries, so some people will say bine, like maybe me. We have a debug folder, and the debug folder contains information about our project and how it's ready to run. Remember, we created this console project is something that could run on any platform, so we end up with several different files available, some JSON files and some DLLs, which are application extensions, so that we can run this project through that environment. The next project that we create, we'll create a standard Windows console project so that you can see some differences in how things are generated there for our binary folder. So we have all sorts of different pieces of information saved in our project folder. We need to become familiar with those as we're working with things. If we decide that this Hello World project should be moved to a flash drive or some other sort of media, the first thing that I would need to do is close Visual Studio. I don't want to have this project open in Visual Studio while I'm trying to move the folder. I might be successful, everything might be fine, but I might also end up with some locked files or missing files and madness like that. So I would close Visual Studio, and then I could copy this entire folder to my flash drive or whatever media I wanted to copy it to, and that's the way that I would copy a Visual Studio project from one media to another. Now, I want to copy this whole project. I do not want to go down to this .cs file and just copy it. If I did, that would work because I would have all the code that I needed, and so that might be a simple way to handle it. And that'll work fine for these basic console applications. But as we get into more and more involved projects, that will not work, and so it's kind of a bad practice from the very beginning. If we just start off with good practices and copy our whole project folder, then we'll never have to worry about missing some pieces and parts. One last thing, I wanted to show you how to make your curly braces color-coded. You might like it, you might not, it's up to you. Now, when we're working with Visual Studio, we have a lot of options in our menu bar, so you can explore through those. We'll be working with some as we go. I want to look at this Tools menu, and I want to choose Get Tools and Features. Yes. The Visual Studio installer comes up and of course says, oh wait, you need to update Visual Studio, because we know how that is. Just a moment. Just going to download a little bit of information really quick. It looks like a small update, so we will let it go. Now, if you notice, Visual Studio really didn't give me any sort of option on that update, so it's probably some sort of security thing. Hopefully it will install very quickly and we can continue on with what we wanted to do. When I'm working with Visual Studio tools, I have a lot of different things available to me from Windows, and these are in some different workload areas. So you can see what I already have checked. I don't have Xamarin installed. I will do that at some point. I'm not a JavaScript programmer, but if I wanted to know more about C++, I could add that. I am a Unity developer, so I do have that one checked. If I were working with somebody who was doing some scientific data analysis, I would have some options available. So we have a lot of different workload tools available. Now, individual components are a little more specific. You might get instructions at some point to install those. My language packs, I'm stuck with English. I could add others if I wanted to. Some of you may. And then I have some options here as to where I'm going to download things, when these updates happen automatically, and things like that. So that's great. I'm going to close out of that. That was our Visual Studio tools, get tools and features. Now, if we look at the next one, extensions and updates, this is an area where we can find some things that are a little bit more fun just for us. So right now, looking at my extensions and update screen, I'm just looking at the installed ones. And if I wanted to search for one, I would go online. Now, the one that I have that's making these curly braces color-coded is this VS Add Color to Your Visual Studio Text Editor. I might have some other things installed, but I can go online and search for things. So if I want to use GitHub, I can. Be careful with that because we're going to be using TFS a little later in the semester. I can use Cloud Explorer to get to my cloud resources. So we have so many different tools that are available to us. And if we expand this, we can see that we have a lot. We have even some visual C# templates that are available for us. Many, many great things. So this was the extensions and updates. So you can search for the CIS150 update and install that. VS4, sorry. And then you can have some color-coded curly braces. Like I said, some people like it, some people don't. I like it because it really emphasizes things when we're looking at the video and makes it a little bit easier to see what's going on. Now, I've had some students in the past that have been unsuccessful just because of problems with curly braces where things get out of whack and it really messes them up. So what am I talking about? Well, what if I just get rid of this one that says it's the end of our class? Do I get any sort of errors or anything? Well, all I've got is that, oh, a curly brace was expected. So it's pretty good at figuring it out. We'll put that back in. And then I'll get rid of this one, my namespace one. And it says, oh, you needed a curly brace. What about my main? I'll get rid of it. And it says, oh, I expected a curly brace. Now, if my insertion point were off someplace else, and I see this error message, remember, I can double click on the description. It'll take me to the place. It's taking me to this end one. Well, that's where it figured it out because it says I had a closing curly brace to match this one. Notice how it's a little off. And I had a closing curly brace to match the opening one that started the class, but I'm missing one for the namespace. Now I know that I want it to go up here to match up with my comments, so I'm going to put it up there, the missing one. Now that shows us that the compiler can help us a lot with these missing curly braces. The problems come in when we start adding more code to our methods and then we have additional sets of curly braces and they can just get a little bit out of hand. This is why I'll label them with comments to try and help you keep track of the opening and closing curly braces. And remember that this is just a big area to make sure that everything's okay. Students can spend a lot of time trying to figure out a problem and it can always be just a curly brace issue. Now, one other thing, why is all this overhead necessary for C#? That's the syntax of the language. That's how it works. We didn't write the language, so we didn't get to decide what the syntax is. So the syntax is namespace, namespace name, curly bracket set. Inside our namespace, we have a class. We always have to have a class. And it's open and closing with curly braces. And then we have our main method that kicks off our program. And again, the body of the main method is enclosed within a set of curly braces. So they can be something for us. Now, a couple of other things about the IDE. If I want to comment out some code, I can select it and I can find the toolbar tool that says comment out those selected lines of code. It gets mad at me because that means I have no code because I commented out this curly brace intentionally. Now, if I want to put that code back and not have it be commented, I can use the uncomment tool. The most important tool in the IDE is undo. Remember, that's Control-Z. I saw something on TV the other day where they were talking to some people from New Zealand or something, and they said, I had to Z back like 12 times. Oh, cool. New terminology. So Control-Z, if you've got it all messed up and you need to get back to where it was, always undo. So Visual Studio, lots of capabilities for you, really full-fledged development tool. This is not just a little student educational interface that we use. It's a full-fledged tool, so it does require Windows to be running to use the full integrated development environment, so be aware of that. It's an important tool. If you're using a Mac with Visual Studio, things are a little bit different. So do please look up some documentation and follow the documentation that they give you for creating a project on a Mac. Make sure that you get your .cs file and everything in the right place and that everything works properly, because we definitely don't want the tool to be something that keeps you from being successful. Now, that's about it for this video. Do explore and see what Visual Studio can do for you. Thank you.